to check and see if we are live just to make sure.
Showing we're live right now.
All right. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm able to.
Can you see the link okay?
Yeah.
This is nice to see you actually.
Huh?
It's good to be able to see you with the
Yeah.
live stream open.
All right. I see what I have to do now. Okay. Just let me know whenever you're ready and then I can.
I'm ready.
Okay. First and Cam, we are back with another live edition of our show. Week 9 has flown by past us, and we had some major upsets this weekend. We hit on some good bets this weekend, which was really nice to see. We will recap those in our Wednesday live broadcast. But huge news in the college football world. Brian Kelly has been fired. He joins Billy Napier and James Franklin as the three guys who are now being fired out of some of the top college football programs in America, and left names like Lane Kiffin, Eli Drinkwitz, Brent Key, and among other guys who are candidates for these jobs. Now, LSU was the biggest domino to fall. It started with Penn State, and then it became Florida, and now it's LSU. That is the best coaching job available. So tell me what your thoughts are on Brian Kelly. One, being right out of town, it seemed like people were ready for him to be gone. And two, just LSU being on the brink of the third straight year not making the playoffs.
Well, they kind of go hand in hand with Brian Kelly. It's interesting because this is the second buyout we've seen of almost $50 million, where we just fire the coach and basically the entire staff is going to be gone at the end of the year as well. They fired the OC, I think, this morning too. And I guess I'm just curious, like, what is it about firing your head coach and basically having no candidate that you know is ready to take this job is appealing, on top of having to pay 54, 56 million, whatever his buyout was, on top of the next guy. So I'm just a little curious. I know that this LSU team had high hopes coming into the season, which tends to be like the demarcation of you're going to be fired. It's a make it or break it year, which I don't know if I love that in football. Things always go weird. Like, let's say Garrett Nussmeier was actually hurt and they just benched him. Would Brian Kelly be out of a job because his team wouldn't be as good? I don't know. So I guess I start with I don't love seeing coaches fired. I think that's the wrong pathway. When I was playing, we had our OC was fired at the end of the season. Brought in a new guy my next year there, and much better as a football team. Actually, that happened to me twice. We had two coordinators fired while I was playing, and that
Jeez.
was the spark that the team needed to be better. I don't know that running Brian Kelly out of town the way that you did encourages the next coach to say, "Yeah, I'm going to take that job, and they're not going to run me out of town the same way." I don't know. As far as candidates go, I think it's Lane, and then it's everybody else. I wonder if Marcus Freeman wants this job. Apparently, he said no to Florida. So that's kind of where I stand right now. What are your thoughts on Brian Kelly and just how it ended first? We'll talk about what's next.
Well, I think the first main thing is that clearly LSU has a lot of money to play with these buyouts. I know he's going to be making what 800 grand a month or something like that for this buyout.
Yeah.
So I think LSU has more of a plan in place than maybe a Florida or even a Penn State did. I think Penn State was a long shot for some of these coaches, and the fact that the prestige might be there, the name might be there, but I don't think it's just as in a desirable place as a Florida, and definitely not as LSU. LSU, that you're not talking that long ago of a national title. Yes, they had some amazing talent on that team, and it's yet to be replicated. But I think the LSU job opens the eyes of Marcus Freeman for sure because it's a direct step up from where he's at now. Now, I think Notre Dame's in a better position right now to make the playoffs and to be successful. But I think with the Florida job is that they have been incompetent for so long that unfortunately, you get a situation where the talent is not really there at Florida. I don't think. I think you have DJ Lagway. That might be cool. That's fine. But does he actually want to be there? I know he's saying that, but does he really want to be at Florida? And is that a roster that you can maintain? Because they have a decent recruiting class, but these guys are going to start following coaches. And so I don't know if Marcus Freeman is able to get a bunch of Notre Dame guys and go to Florida or to LSU. I don't know if that's possible. And I think LSU has to start their recruiting search or their coaching search now. They can't really wait until Marcus Freeman, oh, I made up my mind. Okay, yeah, I flamed out at Notre Dame. Let me go to LSU or Brent Key or any of these other guys. And maybe Signetti's the name that you really wanted. And now that he's tied down back at Oklahoma or Indiana, that you kind of just you want to wait this thing out and see what happens before or during the playoffs, because I think that's really the more make or break thing for everybody else.
Well, I guess the way that I think about it is the only coach that you would want is one that's going to be playing in the playoffs. And so I feel like you're at a disadvantage the moment you fire your coach mid-season because you probably can't hire the best guy for the job if he's the best guy for the job yet because he should be playing for the national title. At least
Right.
that's what you think. And if he's not, then it's like, is he the best guy? So I look at Lane. You mentioned Marcus Freeman. Eli Drinkwitz name's been thrown around. I don't think that he's that great, but
No.
that's its own conversation. I mean, James Franklin should be in the conversation for the Florida job at least. So I just firing your coach, and then you have the winter recruiting. The transfer portal opens January 2nd, and so if you're a Final Four team, like half of your staff has to be recruiting in the portal, getting guys, and then make sure guys sign in high school. The rest of your staff has to be coaching. By the way, all of these coaches know that Lane or we'll say Drinkwitz is out there, Marcus Freeman. They all know and are aware that their head coach could go somewhere else. The boss could leave, and they don't know if that means they get a promotion at the job that they're currently at. Do they have to go to Baton Rouge or Gainesville, Florida, or College Station in Pennsylvania, or State College in Pennsylvania? Like they don't know what they're doing either, and so it puts this crazy spin on what ends up being this college football whirlwind. I actually think, and we can get to this a little bit later, I think Auburn is in one of the best positions they could be in that probably in the past 5 years, as far as where that program could go if they hang on to their coach. I know we talked about maybe Hugh Freeze getting fired, but we can talk about that a little bit later as far as like teams that'll benefit the most from this firing. Obviously, Bama's going to be right there catching the pieces, but I think Auburn has a really good chance to get back on track if they can get Hugh Freeze to figure it out. So it's just tricky to me.
Yeah. Well, the main thing that I'm looking at is there's these three main spots open, and there's a lot of pickings that people want to choose from. And I think that the coaching talent is a little bit slimmer than we might think. We might be able to say, oh, Brent Key, we can get this guy, or we can get this guy. It's a job upgrade for him, so he'll automatically take it. And I don't think that that is necessarily the case because, okay, your LSU, what is the difference between Brian Kelly and Eli Drinkwitz? Is that really a major step up from where you're at right now, or what are the expectations when you bring in Eli Drinkwitz? Is it national title? He hasn't proved that at Mizzou. He hasn't even gotten to the SEC title game. So until then, I think his name is more of a back like a secondary option, maybe even a third option. I think it starts with Lane Kiffin. And then before it gets to Eli Drinkwitz, it's Marcus Freeman, it's Brent Key, it's Golish from South Florida, even possibly if they continue to have a decent season and turn things around. Or you pluck one of these guys like a Jed Fish from Washington, or you go out and get some of these other names that people that are successful. And so I don't necessarily think that you making a lateral move to a Drinkwitz or something like that is the option, because your fans aren't going to expect that, or they're not expecting that one, but they're also expecting to be back in the playoffs even. And until Mizzou can get there on their own front, then I don't really think that he's really much of an option.
Well, let me say this. Here's how I think this coaching search will go for LSU because I don't know if they want to put themselves in the same situation they were just in with Brian Kelly. And so it goes two ways. You either get Lane Kiffin, you get Marcus Freeman, and maybe there's a third guy out there who's super elite that we're not considering or thinking about. Maybe they have three options. but he also has not been to the summit either. As far as where Ole Miss has been, so we got to keep that in mind. But I think if you don't get the top two guys, top three guys that are on your list, I think sneakily LSU would do this. Maybe Penn State, maybe Florida does the same thing. Is they get a guy that the boosters feel like, the AD feels like, the board of trustees feels like they can kind of control. So like a John Summerall or an Alex Golish. I think those would be two names that would probably be too small of a pick for the fan base, but I think they could get paid a certain way. The buyout could be a certain size, and the athletic director and everybody who's in charge, the boosters, could feel like they have a real input as to what they say will actually occur in recruiting on the field and everything else. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of these schools dropped down and got a coach that's, kind of ascending, but isn't at the level we think should be at the helm of a Florida or Penn State, in God forbid an LSU.
Well, I
So
mean, you get a
that's a
guy,
thought.
yeah, you get Signetti who comes from James Madison, and I don't really know how many Indiana people figured that a James Madison coach bringing a bunch of his players over and cutting a bunch of Indiana guys was gonna go how it is now, and it's turned into an $80 million extension. I think you try. I think most ADs and most school presidents want to hit that home run. Like, okay, I was the one who went and found this perfect hire. There may be a little bit of ego involved in that.
For cheap too.
Yeah, for cheap. And then you go and get one of these guys that's going to expect big money. The payout's going to be huge. And now this guy is the head honcho of your program. And so you're stripping a little bit of that power away from yourself because everybody else is going to swarm and rattle around and rally around the guy that's proven. Problem is, there's not that many proven guys left for these schools to take from. And so I think if you're LSU, Penn State, or Florida, you're going to have to deal with at least 1 year of bad football. And that might not be due to talent, but just poor coaching and the inability to get the right coaching staff in there. I think that's just what's going to have to happen unless you personally buy out one of these other coaches and give them an offer they can't refuse. You're going to have a situation where you're now left with, you're this is what happened. You fired the guy, you gave him a buyout, you let him go sit on his couch and enjoy his life with an extra $1 million in the bank every single year. Meanwhile, you had no plan on who we're going to hire. You had no single target. And if you did have a single target, that guy's probably hired or going to interview for another job. And then the report comes out another day that Sarkeesian's reps are telling people that he's looking at NFL jobs or he'd be open to it. And so if you're Penn State and you're Florida, you're just going to keep getting pushed further and further down the list to where you're going to be left with just kind of slim pickings. And I saw a joke on Twitter, and that was like this coaching carousel is going to turn into 2016 NBA free agent market, where guys like Timothy Mozgov get $70 million dollars, or guys like Evan Turner get $70 million dollars, and you're going to have to overpay for a coach who may not be qualified for the job yet, or at least hasn't proven that he can win on a stage like you're giving him.
Well, that and every one of the schools that's made a firing thought we have a much better job than the previous. Penn State was like, yeah, we're gonna fire our guy, and like UCLA is open, Virginia Tech's open, so that's fine. Who cares? Like we are the best job right now. There aren't that many better than our job. And then Billy Napier gets fired. You're like, all right, well Florida's the best job now, and Penn State's number two. And then LSU fires their coach, and now you're Penn State, and you look smart for letting James Franklin go early in the season so you can get ahead of the coaching carousel. Okay, now you're second, now you're third. Same thing with Florida. So you're obviously, and I saw a report that they offered Lane 80 million. I think it was like 11 million a year. 80 million was the total contract value, and I think his buyout was really large too. Like that was the report that I saw that they offered Lane, and judging by how he coached against or at Ole Miss against Oklahoma, looks like he's pretty content, staying where he is. And so LSU they have to come with, I think, an additional 20 million to get him over that $100 million mark. I really think that that's where the market's going for these coaches. If that
Damn.
Texas job comes open, I don't even know. I could see Kalen DeBoer taking that job, and he'd be the best prospect for that job.
You
I don't
think he
think
would
he'd be
jump
fired.
ship from Alabama?
I don't think he would. I don't think he would. But he's, to me, in my opinion, the best coach who hasn't signed a brand new deal, as in this year, to take that job. I could see. I don't know. Like Clark Lee and Vanderbilt, like that feels like a name that could be one. To to me, it feels like Ryan Summerfield, Alex Golesh, and John Summerall, those three head coaches, the Memphis head coach being
Yeah,
Summerfield, Golesh being USF, and then John Summerall at Tulane. I feel like whoever of those three is done playing football first gets the biggest check at the next school.
that's fair.
If it's Penn State, it's like they're done. He can come. It's December. It's after the actually the hiring should start after conference championship play. So if one of those three aren't in their conference championship, then he's gone. He is going somewhere else, and so that feels like the first domino to go. It just doesn't feel like it's going to be at LSU. It doesn't feel like, from what I heard from a few people just online, that Florida is not looking to hire another small-time head coach. Fair or not, they're looking for a guy who's doing it at a high level, who has done it at a high level. So I don't know if one of those three lands there. So that could be the Penn State hire, but those are all Southern guys coaching at some of those schools right now, at least more Southern than Penn State is. So it just gets really murky really fast when you make this, I think, $100 million decision at Penn State, at Florida, at LSU, and you don't have like in some sort of writing somewhere somebody's ready to step up and take that job. And to be fair, that coach cannot. He truly cannot quit on his team middle of the season. That's horrible, like leadership coaching, and
Right.
that doesn't go very well if you're an agent as the school that you just signed to. You might leave for a better job mid-season. Like that doesn't go well. So next year's a dead season for LSU, Penn State, and Florida.
I
And
agree. Yeah.
I just don't know what you go and do at that point.
Well, and I think you have to take the hit on the chin and say, you know what, internally we know that this year is kind of a wash and we're going to try to get the guy that we want. And if you do get that guy, you need him to have at least a season under his belt to figure out the program, to figure out the tendencies, recruiting, figure out his staff, because we know that offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators, those guys can get plucked just as easy as these other head coaches. And so if you lose one of those guys too, you're kind of just taking two steps forward and one step back. I think that what's interesting is you're seeing a lot of LSU recruits now buying back into the program now that Brian Kelly is gone. James Franklin, you kind of saw the same thing there too. You saw some Penn State guys decommit, but you also saw some guys being like, okay, I think there's a chance that we get somebody major here, so I'm going to stay. The grass isn't always greener. I look at a guy, the head coach at Vanderbilt. His name again, Clark Lee. Yeah, I don't think that the momentum that he has right now, I don't think that it would be smart for him to just bail on that. You're in Nashville. Vanderbilt seems like they're turning their direction towards the football program and investing a lot in it. And I wouldn't be surprised in the next 2 or 3 years you see a report that Vanderbilt just got a lump sum of $30 to $50 million in cash for them to spend on their football program. And you see the stadium, that's improving. I'm sure that there's a new indoor facility in the works if it's not done already. So you're going to have a lot of recruits that are going to be um, they're going to be very interested in Vanderbilt like never before. So I think that's exciting for a school like Vanderbilt, which is known for academics, which is fine. But if you can turn this football program into something and be a perennial top 15, I mean, Vanderbilt would be happy just to be perennial top 25. And now they're sitting in the top 10. Like, wait a minute, we have a shot at getting to the SEC title game, having a first round bye. There's a lot of things that Vanderbilt is now set up for the future and for future recruits to say, hey, okay, now I'm trying to find a basketball comparison to Vanderbilt and how that works. I really can't right now. I wish I had more time to, but I think it's very interesting that schools like Vanderbilt, the Texas A&Ms, all it really is taking is some lump sum of money and the right coach, and next thing you know, you've got a program that is all in and it could really compete for a national title on any given Saturday.
Well, yeah, it feels like with Diego Pavia, you're one quarterback away, one recruiting class away from being an elite team. I think that it's been cool to see Kurt Signetti, hopefully as Clark Lee, like stay and build something special at these schools. I also think that they are weighing or having the conversation between maybe their spouse or their close family of it's probably easier for me to get a 7, 8, 9 year, 80, $90 million extension at the spot that I'm at. And I know everybody. Everybody trusts me. They respect me. They believe that I know what's best for the program. Rather than taking that same money somewhere else, and you got to get comfortable with the AD, the president, the boosters. You have to relearn everything. And it's like Cursignetti. doesn't matter to me who's walking around that Bloomington campus. Nobody's above Kurt Signetti. Not one person, not one booster, not a president, AD, nothing. Kurt Signetti runs that show up there. Clark Lee could be the same thing at Vanderbilt. He could be the exact same thing. This guy took us from like a funny, goofy meme of an offensive lineman talking about Alabama, you're next, to really taking down Alabama and then pushing them again and then beating up on Mizzou and being the number 9 ranked team in the country. So, like, you look at that and you think, I could get a statue here potentially, but I know everybody who's here. I know all of the intricate pieces and the money movers and everything, all the boosters. They all trust me. They all like me. They all appreciate me way more than they would at LSU because Brian Kelly, day one, had to fake an accent. It's like, all right, like this
Yeah.
isn't going to work very well. So I wonder if Clark Lee looks at that and says the same thing. I wonder if Eli Drinkwitz is looking at this and thinking, maybe I can get an extension. Maybe I can be that guy at Mizzou. He hasn't, in my opinion, he hasn't surpassed Gary Pinkel as far as like one of the better Mizzou coaches we've ever seen. He's probably a few wins away from that. You got to win the conference, but at the same time, like I'm sure he's wondering, I could maybe build a legacy. Versus you go to Florida, you're under the shadow of Urban Meyer first and foremost, on top of whoever else was there. LSU, same thing. Saban was there. Like so many different legacy coaches there. Penn State, like Joe Paul, like now you're calling up James Franklin, who's very consistent. I don't know. And one thing's interesting. James Franklin was at Vanderbilt before he went to Penn State, and so that job has kind of been a springboard. So we'll see where Clark Lee ends up. But I just wonder with some of these coaches, do they feel the need to move on, or is there enough money to retain them? Like I saw John Summerall posted on X, just laid up in a private jet with his shoes on, and it was very cryptic, very strange. And I was like, well, maybe he's renegotiating his contract, but he's going to take a shop around at because I guess if Lane's going somewhere, Ole Miss is going somewhere.
Exactly. And
So
that was going to be my next point is that these guys kind of have no choice but to leave. It's just a matter of where. Because if the the Ole Miss domino falls, then I could guarantee you Summerall, who's at Tulane, Brent Key, who's at Georgia Tech, those are very regional, very close. Why not bring that guy in and bring some of that local talent in? And let's not forget Georgia Tech's in the top 10 too. So you get they flame out. You get some of that you get some of that talent to jump ship and come to Ole Miss or come to other schools. I think that's a leverage point that some of these coaches can have. Like, hey, not only is it me, but I have a quarterback or I have a receiver or I got some offensive linemen that can come here too, and we can really change this thing around. So I think Eli Drinkwitz, it seems more. He seems like he's on a different side than even Lane Kiffin, and he's definitely above Brent Key and John Summerall in this aspect. But you talked about it, you just hit on it. The guys that want to build a legacy, guys that really want to be the face of a program. I think that in college football outweighs so many more things, and we see it with Nick Saban retiring. Urban Meyer, yeah, he won national championship at Ohio State, but before that was the face of Florida football. DeBoer will never surpass the magic that Coach Saban was able to create. But that says Coach Saban Field for a reason. And I think that speaks volumes when you talk about the power and the control that you're able to have over a program. And so I think that has to be taken in consideration when you're talking about these coaching changes. Yeah, your legacy at Tulane, John Summerall, probably doesn't mean much. But if you can get 3 or 4 years in at Ole Miss and really get your feet dug in the sand there like Lane Kiffin did, then I think you have a chance to build something. Brian Kelly, we thought coming from Notre Dame was going to be able to do that. And like you said, faking the accent from kind of week one, it was like, all right, this is a guy that has to try to fit in, and trying to fit in versus a natural fit like we see with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. That's when you start bringing in $20 million a year, or you start getting that $25 million roster because people believe in you. Not only they believe in you as a coach, but they believe in you as a person. And I think that's what Brian Kelly struggled with the most.
100%. And when we look at this coaching carousel, I think that the turnover is so great that I don't think a lot of these coaches really consider that they would have these opportunities as fast as they do. I mean, it feels like we are one SEC, or Sharon Moore is one more year of not producing from that job, and he's back at Michigan. So, like, the carousel not
You're
only is it
not
going to
wrong.
pick up and be so much larger and the money going to be so much faster, you have to get these results. And for a guy like, and I want to stick on to Alex Golesh, Summeralls, Ryan Silverfield, you can't build what you want to build at a school that's not Big Ten, SEC, and I'll give Texas Tech kind of what they're building in the Big 12. Like you, I guess ACC as well. I mean, the Power Four. You can't build what you want to build outside of the Power Four, and so it feels like you naturally have to move up. And it does feel like these guys are in prime position, and every year there's going to be another crop of one or two guys that we feel like could take on these spots. But the guys in the group of five are always going to want to move up. There's always going to be a coach that's on the hot seat or about to get fired. Dabo Swinney next year could be definitely on his way out if they start 1-3, 0-3, 2-5.
Well, I think the pressure is immediately on from week one for him next year. You're losing a bunch of receivers, you're losing your quarterback, so you're going to have to go and probably finally hit the portal and get a guy that's not a homegrown recruit. And then the pressure's now off of the athletic director and the president, and the pressure's all on Dabo Swinney because the writing's on the wall. If you're not going to produce this year, you're not going to make the playoff, you're going to be out. And it seems like he's more so just worn out his welcome. Like, yeah, you won your two national championships, but that seems like so long ago that now that you haven't produced these, I'll just say in the playoff era, you got there last year kind of, you limped in. You limped into the playoffs last year. And then you beat Texas, and it's like, okay, well, was Texas really supposed to be there? I don't know. Well, no, they lost Texas. I'm lost Texas. I got that wrong. So you go and you limp into the playoffs, and then you lose to Texas. Your quarterback has a good game, and the expectation is to him to come back and be the best quarterback in the nation. That's falling flat on his face. The defense, who has multiple draft picks on their team, they look like crap as a unit. And so I think that guys like him, the writing's on the wall that if they don't come out the gate swinging next year, or they at least don't even have a top 10 recruiting class or a top 5 transfer portal class, then the seat is really hot, and you could see a guy like him being fired potentially mid-season like we've seen this year.
Well, here's one thing that I think will be interesting to hear these coaches in the offseason is I didn't think Brian Kelly's job was on the line this season. It was. I didn't think James Franklin could do anything to get fired at Penn State this season. He got fired. Billy Napier, we knew walking in, he could be a dead man walking, and then Mike Norvell certainly is on that spot. So is Hugh Freeze. I wonder if, because to me, James Franklin and Brian Kelly, they're the two that I think we looked at, and they said in the offseason, this is our year. Like, we've got the returning quarterback. I like our offensive line, our defensive line. Our defense is going to be really good. LSU took that Bryce Underwood money and spent it on some DBs, kept some guys, got some guys, and that money was very well spent. Um, but it's like high expectations. Dabo Swinney could have been the same thing, and you come out flat. And now that like we've all been waiting all spring, all summer, we're hearing how great things are looking, how you guys are getting recruits and things are just flowing, and you come out and you have a dud. For specifically Penn State didn't play very well. Then Oregon, not good. And you drop another one and another one. So I I wonder if we start seeing coaches in the offseason just saying, look, we are what we are, and we'll see where we end up. And I wonder if that maybe doesn't inspire boosters, but it helps them preserve their job because the two coaches that I'm most surprised got fired because they had very high expectations and they came out and they did not meet them. And I don't know if it was their fault entirely, but it ended up being what it was. And so I would be curious this offseason if coaches change their tune a little bit to we'll see how good we're going to be rather than we are an elite team who should expect to make the playoff and go on a deep run.
Right. Well, that's a good point. I actually want to change tunes a little bit to this Vanderbilt Mizzou game because I thought it was a lot of eye-opening things. And you talk about the coaching search, talk about the QB injury, and all of that. I am very interested to see how this situation plays out because Bo Papula is the $1.5 million quarterback that comes in. He looks great. He's kind of setting his team on fire. He's using his legs. He looks better than Drew Aller looks this season. Eli Drinkwitz looks like a competent coach when he has the right pieces around him. Ahmad Hardy's the best running back in the country. Mizzou's got it going on all day long. They lose to Alabama, okay. They bounce back against Auburn. Struggle of a game, but whatever, gut it out in OT on the road. And then they play Vandy, and it's like, okay, this team, Mizzou is clearly not as good as Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's quarterback is better. They're more physical. Their trenches are better, and they're better coached. And then your QB gets hurt, and then a true freshman comes in and looks pretty darn good. And I think that's great for Mizzou fans to see. I think that's a relaxer for the coaching staff while Bo Prabula is out with the ankle injury, that we have a guy that we think is competent. But you got to remember, Matt Zoller started the season the third string quarterback. Sam Horn, who was in competition with Bo Prabula in the beginning of the season, there was no Matt Zoller's talk at all. This kid comes in as a true freshman. It's probably the best thrower out of all three of them, if I just had to guess without seeing Sam Horn. And then you have Eli Drinkwitz, who is on the hot seat for these other coaching jobs, who are clearly, they're a better choice than Mizzou in pretty much every single facet of football. What is it? It's just a lot of layers to this, because that kid's a true freshman and he's Drinkwitz's guy. Drinkwitz has the ability to now snatch him from Mizzou and take him somewhere else. And maybe the tape that this kid's about to put on display in the next couple of weeks is enough to convince convince the next school that, hey, Eli Drinkwitz, I'm the right guy for this job, but I also have another quarterback who put good stuff out on film. He can come with me. Do you think that has anything to do with a possible coaching change, or do you think that has any effect on what could happen in the future with this football program?
It's a great point. I don't mind it. I haven't seen enough, and I do think there's an opportunity where we do see a package deal. I think Austin Simmons with Lane Kiffin is probably going wherever he goes. So, like, I think there's some package deals coming around. We saw Arbuckle and Mateer, same thing. So I do think that there is a play there. I don't know that we're going to ride with new coach, new quarterback, because the OC Kirby Moore has to come too, and I don't know where Kirby Moore's going to end up. So there's that. What I will say about being a backup quarterback who gets thrust into the moment, a few things happen. One is you're just playing because there's no expectations, and you weren't even prepared to get snaps. So like you really aren't dialed into the game. You're in there. You're kind of just playing in the flow of things.
Mm.
For Zollers to step in and perform the way he did, I thought was fantastic. He probably is the best thrower on that roster. But the offense certainly changed from we're going to spread you out and we can go left and right with the football to just about everything was to the right, roll the pocket right, like RPO, everything kind of looked right. So it's hard to defend against a brand new quarterback, brand new system. I thought Vanderbilt handled it okay. But for everything you're saying, that was a one-score game. That defense, I thought Mizzou's defense played the best of the groups that I thought going into the game, which is I think Vandy's going to run all over him. They kind of did, kind of didn't.
Right.
I thought Vandy could throw the ball over top. They really weren't able to. And so a huge credit to Mizzou's defense. That clearly travels. You could argue Mizzou's defense is better than Alabama's, considering what Vandy did to Alabama. So
Certainly better than LSU.
well, yeah, well, I think you pair a capable-ish offense with a defense that can get stops. You never know. And fortunately for Mizzou, they don't have to play LSU because I don't know what that would look like. But LSU has Mizzou has a bye, and then they have Texas A&M at home. That's a sick game. That's going to be a lot of fun. But I don't know what to expect from this Mizzou team anymore. You're fighting for a playoff spot, but I'm looking at a buzzsaw of an A&M team that I don't know you can score with. Then Mississippi State comes to town the very next week. They're not playing horrible football. They had Texas down. I cannot believe we lost that bet.
Can't believe it.
Makes me sick. But anyway, then they go to Oklahoma and then they finish with Bobby Petrino, Arkansas, and that he's looking for a win. So I would not be surprised if Arkansas pulls something out of a hat and beat Mizzou there too. So I don't know where this football team goes. You probably have your best defense under drink, and if you're thinking he gets a new job and brings some of his players, yeah, but is it the same scheme? Is it the same DC? Is it the same OC? Like, what is Ahmad Hardy going to be the best back? Is he coming? So,
Right.
like, Drake has a lot of assets. I think those assets also get hefty checks for the schools, and they go elsewhere. That could easily happen too.
Well, yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I think when I've been saying it from the beginning of the season that the coaching carousel is going to be way more interesting than the transfer portal, because it's going to be dictating a lot more. I think that the coaches in college football clearly just dictate so much, and you can see teams that with talent all over the field on paper, and then you get a coach like a Napier who just seems kind of incompetent with that talent, and then you have Signetti who I think if he was playing against better overall competition week in and week out, that maybe the Indiana looks a little bit different. But we're talking about Indiana for crying out loud. They don't have the best talent in the country. So clearly the coaching is far superior there than anywhere else. My I think it just kind of circles back to Eli Drinkwitz being a real candidate for these jobs. And I never really thought coming into this season that it would be him on the forefront of a Penn State or a Florida or possibly even an LSU job or Ole Miss, because as much as he fits in at Mizzou, he seems like a fine successor to Lane Kiffin. And if he were to go, their personalities sort of match up a little bit. Lane's a little bit cooler, a little younger. Drinkwitz kind of a dorkier guy, but both still kind of like the spotlight in the way and love to rally around the students and the fans at the school and really embrace what it means to be a coach of those programs. I just think Mizzou's the first half of the season, Drinkwitz is definitely that guy. And I think towards the latter part of the season where we start to see Mizzou's schedule get really tough, they drop another game that puts them at 3 losses. Then they're subject to even 4 losses. And then when the talks and the noise of you possibly getting a new coach, your coach leaving, those just get louder and louder. And so I think it could set up a really sour end to a Mizzou football season that might make Drinkwitz look a little bit worse going into his new school with the record. But I think what you're seeing a lot of, which is kind of really sad to see, is you're seeing a lot of guys, a lot of players kind of check out on their programs. And then you're seeing reports of Brian Kelly checking out of their program. You're talking about a head coach who just got paid $54 million to go sit on his ass. You're telling me he checked out? You're telling me we're paying this? Yeah, and James Franklin, the same thing. You're telling me these guys checked out? You think James Franklin checked out so much that he lost to UCLA and Northwestern in back-to-back weeks? Like that's what we're doing. So I don't know if those conversations need to be had with James Franklin and Brian Kelly on their next job, because I can guarantee who's not getting $50 million buyouts for their next job is James Franklin and Brian Kelly.
Well, James Franklin, if he just does what he did somewhere else, he's worth every penny. Like, to be fair, it's just he built something at Penn State that was going to accumulate. So Jim Harbaugh did the same thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't very good, got better, and then it got to this point where he was like, "This is the team," and they played like that team. They didn't win a national championship, and then sanctions, whatever, he leaves. But it's like that's what James Franklin was kind of building too. He just didn't have the guys to do it, or the OC, in my opinion, to do it. But he was right there, so like he wasn't far. The Drake thing is interesting because he needs this team to win out or compete against at least Texas A&M and be a 3-loss team because that will probably be better than LSU. That's obviously going to be better than Florida, and it will be better than Penn State. So his team in the SEC will be a better record than the previous coach that those schools had. If he finishes with 4 losses,
Mm.
I still think that he ends up maybe at one of those schools. I don't know if he leaves, but let's say he does. He has way less trust than he would have 6 weeks ago, and so that to me gets a little interesting. He will have a much shorter leash than he does maybe at Mizzou if he takes the Penn State job or the Florida job.
Could cost you $10 million.
Say it again.
I said could cost you $10 million. One or two more losses could cost you $10 million.
10.
Yeah.
I think it costs you 30. I think you go and he's going to get a $30 million contract somewhere else, maybe 50, but it could have been 80 had he just
Right.
gone with 3 losses. So I think that the opportunity he's giving up right now, which we knew this going into the season, schedule stinks up front, gets really challenging at the back end. I thought South Carolina was going to be a good team, so I thought they'd have 3 losses right now. I thought they'd beat Vanderbilt, whatever. I didn't think Texas A&M was going to be this good, and Oklahoma, I don't know where they are right now, and then Arkansas, like this could unravel quickly, and it feels like the team is still bought in. I mean, we'll see this. They have a bye week, but the following week we'll see against Texas A&M. But for Drake, I don't know. He's unfortunately going to play and coach himself out of some of these jobs. When if he just sat down like James Franklin did nothing, he'd probably be the one getting some of these paychecks. So unfortunate for him, but it's his own doing. The AD's doing. You play freaking UMass, and like your toughest game is KU, and you are fortunate to get out of that one alive. Like
Yeah, who knows what
crazy.
they lose to KU that first week. This is a totally totally different conversation. You're not even talking about him being eligible for these jobs. It's more about, all right, who's Mizzou about to try to grab from these fired locations? Because I tell you what, if Drinkwitz were to get fired, that Mizzou would love some James Franklin.
Well, for sure. James Franklin is perfect. He's a little warmer weather, and then you get to recruit, I think, across the country really well. Mizzou, for whatever reason, has always recruited Texas very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously, James Franklin knows where to recruit. Mizzou's always had a good defensive line, so whoever wants to wear that number 11, like, that's not a problem. So, James Franklin would be right there. I hope James Franklin gets that Florida job. It would be awesome. I think it's too much pressure for him. I think, like, the Virginia Tech jobs out there, like, I think that Florida job would be too much pressure. But if he's the real deal, like if he thinks he can turn it around again, that Florida job would be sick because that team would be at best like or at worst a 7-win football team, and that's a scary Florida team. And that's what Shane Beamer in South Carolina should be, and they just can't put it
Correct.
together. He's a guy that's just escaping, great personality, very open and honest. But it's like if this was a bigger school with bigger demands, he also would not have a job.
Yeah, in a close game against Bama, they actually almost pulled that one out. Not surprising to see them actually choke that game away and lose, but
That's how he
he
lose.
he's one of those guys too. You get a game like that, and that's kind of how Billy Napier was escaping by. You beat Texas, like all right, you bought yourself another week, and you know if he would have beaten Bama, he would have given himself a lot of room to work with. Let's jump over to the college football playoff and our prediction of what we think is going to be 1 through 12 because the season it's coming down to the very end. We are going into week 10. I can't believe I'm even saying this right now. NFL not far behind. It feels like this football season just flying by. Maybe because we cover it every single week that we record twice a week. It's like, damn, we've just been right back on camera talking about, kind of the same stuff again with these teams just kind of rotating. So you gave me a list of your top 12 teams, and surprisingly enough, Ohio State was not number one. You actually had Texas A&M. So give me a rundown of your top four, because I see Indiana is at number four on your list behind Alabama, which I don't have a problem with, but obviously the AP poll has something definitely a little bit different than what they think.
Well, for sure. I think that quality of wins matters a lot to me. Like that, it means to me kind of the world. Like the difference between Oregon after they beat Penn State and Oregon after they got beat by Indiana
Mm-hmm.
is an extremely different outlook. I don't think Ohio State's really played a good football team. Texas has proven they're not a very good football team, and everybody that win at Washington was pretty impressive. I will give them that, but they're still not beating teams that match up roster to roster. And it might not be Ohio State's fault. There might be no team in the country that matches up with them roster for roster. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if that's the case, it's going to play out. I happen to think that Texas A&M has won in multiple different ways. They've gone in the mud against Auburn, and that Auburn team's scrappy. Then they just go over the top with against Notre Dame, and then they like stomp on the throat of LSU and get their coach fired by shutting them down in the second half. And so I've seen this team beat really good defenses, handle really good offenses. I'm very much impressed with Texas A&M. I have Indiana right behind Alabama for the same reason. I watched Bama go on the road and beat Georgia at their place at Sanford Stadium. So that to me is again, it's probably the best on the road win we've seen this year. Maybe Texas A&M, maybe it was Indiana and Oregon, but they're neck and neck. I just don't think those two rosters have anything on Ohio State, and I don't know that anybody's playing better than Texas A&M right now. So those are my top four, and then Georgia would be number five right there. But that's where I see college football right now, and I think that if Ohio State and Texas A&M matched up today, Ohio State might have the spread. Maybe they're 2.5, 3.5 point
Probably
favorites.
three and a half. Yeah.
But that would be a scary game because Marcel Reed gets loose, and Ohio State will not play a dual threat quarterback until Michigan,
Right.
and that's not a very good Michigan team. But Bryce Underwood can have his way. You never know. So I'm not looking at Ohio State as a team that deserves the number one spot yet, only because they haven't played anybody worth giving them that spot to. They look great though.
That's fair. I would keep Ohio State at number one because they just look like the most complete football team. Talking about the athletes they have on defense, Arvell Reese is kind of his name's bubbled up a lot, and it will continue to bubble up as he kills it at combines and at pro days and stuff like that. My scariest team right now, I think, is Georgia. That nobody's talking about. I think the scariest team in the country is Alabama and potentially even Indiana. But right now, no one's really talking about Kirby Smart's football team. And I know that they beat up on Ole Miss a little bit. That game probably should have been a lot further in the score than it indicated. But and maybe it's because Georgia Tech right down the road is really good too. So you have two Georgia teams that are inside the top 10. It'll probably get to the playoffs. I think Georgia Tech has kind of sealed their fate at this point, and they will get to the ACC championship and win. But I like what Georgia is proving week in and week out. I think they're going to sit in that middle range where it's okay. Bama and Texas A&M might compete for the SEC title game. Maybe Georgia sneaks in, but they're in that perfect spot to where they can probably afford one more loss and still make it. And if they do make it to the SEC title game, then they don't necessarily have to win. So I think they're sitting in a great spot. Miami at number 10. They're sneakily, I think Miami, what they showed against Louisville was very worrisome as far as them competing against other playoff teams. Do I think Miami is better than Vanderbilt right now? No. Do I think Miami is better than Georgia Tech right now? I don't know. I wouldn't think so. Are they better than Oregon, Georgia, A&M, Indiana, Ohio State, or Bama? Not even close. I think they're more. I think they're closer to Notre Dame, who they beat in Week 1, and I think they're also closer to like a Tennessee or Texas Tech, who's sitting at 13 and 14. Which I've always said is that 13, 12 to 14 spot is like kind of the best place to sit because you can kind of ride the coats of not making it to your title game, but then getting that 9 to 11 seed in the playoffs, which is great. And then you have BYU at number 10, who's undefeated, who was at Iowa State and was struggling in the first half, and one play happens, and next thing you know, they blow the water open with that game. So I am really intrigued with the AP poll right now. I think maybe it means more now that the season is going on. You have Texas at number 20. I don't think they don't have a shot to really compete for the playoffs anymore. To me, I think they're done. Cincinnati sitting there at 17. They're a scary team in the Big 12. I think they have a chance. If BYU falls, if Texas Tech loses another game, they have a chance to kind of creep back on up. But that number 12 spot, I really want to talk about who you think is going to make that number 12 spot. If it's USF, if it's Memphis, if Tulane's going to pop back up, who do you think is going to take control of that number 12 spot? And do you think that team has a chance against a number 5?
No, I don't think the team has a chance against the number five. I don't think so. I do think it'll be South Florida. I think that they were up on Memphis. Memphis ended up going 21 straight or 17 straight in the fourth quarter, something crazy like that. Like that game was, they were dead in the water, and then Memphis just kind of came back and took hold of it. To me, it feels like a team that let off the gas. I think USF's the better football team. Anytime I see a game where in the first three quarters it's one team, fourth quarter ends up being another team, it's just like it's college kids playing football and things get weird. And so I don't put much stock into a comeback win like that as the overall picture. I would still have South Florida favored over Memphis
Mm-hmm.
if they played again.
Same. Yeah.
I would take South Florida to win that game as well. To me, the scariest team you mentioned it being Georgia. I think Georgia's a really good football team. I mean, they're going to be. I think Georgia has the chance to be the team that goes to the national championship off one singular reason, which is they're going to have a home game that first week of the playoffs, and we're going to have probably Ohio State, Texas A&M, assuming all hangs on. Maybe Indiana, maybe Bama have a bye, and we've seen like we saw Oregon last year off a bye. Ohio State came and spanked them, and we saw a couple teams with a bye that didn't do too well. And so I think Georgia will have that first playing game. Now we could see Indiana lose, and I think AP would punish them quite a bit because they don't have a bye left on their schedule. But like if Georgia does not get that bye, they're going to be a scorching hot team hosting a game, probably in Atlanta, probably somewhere super south with a ton of their fans, and that's a team that you don't want to be in front of. To me though, I think Ole Miss is the scariest team because they seem to like shapeshift into whatever they need to do to win. When I watched them play against Georgia, the offense came to life. Like they did what they had to do. Then I watched them play against Oklahoma, and that defense came out to play. They played against LSU. That defense came out to play. So whatever is on, like whatever is needed of that team, for whatever reason, they step up and they take care of it. And so I think they have the quarterback that I trust the most in the country right now. I trust Ty Simpson a lot.
Wow.
I but Trinidad Chambliss, you watch him play,
Wow.
the kid like at times he'll make a mistake, but not really. He's very accurate. He's very on time. They put the ball in his hands to throw an inside slant in a basically a slot fade to like close out Oklahoma before they end up just throwing the backward chance his hands are throwing deep, and that's just not what you see from college players and who hit it with accuracy. So to me, it's like he's kind of the Bryce Young of this year. Don't know what he projects out as a pro. Don't think we'll really care. But like game on the line, he's just a gamer. And so to me, he makes it like I do not want to see these dudes in the playoff at all. That defense could like morph into something great, and that quarterback is just so deadly, and he's so slippery too. Like
Right.
LSU could not, or Oklahoma rather, could not get him on the ground to save a third down.
You're talking about a really good Oklahoma defense too, who
Right.
sucks for Oklahoma. They really put it together on defense, which seems to be like the first time we've ever really seen an Oklahoma defense be elite, and their star quarterback goes down for an injury. Just super unfortunate. You had lightning in a bottle and you let it slip out, and shit like that happens, and it's okay. But um, I want to direct my attention to Notre Dame at this 12 spot in the AP poll because they don't have a conference championship to play for. The rest of their schedule isn't anything impressive, but it seems like the AP poll is going to always continue to reward Notre Dame just for winning, no matter how ugly it is, no matter how or who they're playing against. It seems like they're going to get the benefit of the doubt. Like a Georgia Tech, as soon as they slip up and lose, or they play Georgia at the end of the year, you don't really know what's going to happen with them. Do they fall to the top 10? Do they go down a couple spots depending on where Georgia's at? I don't really know. But Notre Dame, especially with the Marcus Freeman noise and all that. I think he's doing a good job of channeling it out. What do you make of Notre Dame at 12, and do you see them climbing up into that top 8 or top 7 range before the season's over with?
Well, I think the AP is like we think they're gonna win out, so they're probably in the playoff. Like that's how I feel like they're ranking them because they don't deserve to be ranked 12. They haven't really beat
No.
anybody that we think is impressive. They beat up on Arkansas, but that was the Sam Pittman Arkansas. They held Boise State to 7 points. The team's averaging like 40 a game. I don't really take much stock in that. Like, and then they had a not close game, but it was kind of close against USC. So they don't, in my opinion, deserve to be near number 12, but they're there because I think the AP wants them in. And in my opinion, any team ranked 1 through 10 loses, or 1 through 11, I guess, loses. Like they're right there in the playoff. Like that's just kind of how it's seeding out. So it feels like they want them in. I mean, do we think BYU is going to win out? Like, do we think
Mm-hmm.
Georgia Tech is going to be ranked number 9, 10, or 11? If they get beat by Georgia, Ole Miss loses, they're definitely out. So like the team that I think is going to get shafted the most is probably Texas Tech.
Mm.
They're sitting at 13 right now, and college football, nothing was going to hold true the entire time. But like they're a one-loss team. Quarterback was hurt, went on the road, barely lost, came back almost. To me, they deserve that 12 spot way more than Notre Dame does. But like, who is Notre Dame beat? I don't know. Who is Texas Tech beat?
Right.
BYU did too. So I don't know. I like that Notre Dame's relevant because I just like seeing a northern team compete with a lot of these southern teams. But I don't know that they deserve this spot just yet. The season is still a little not finished yet for where they are ranked, especially with no conference championship to play for. Like they really luck out because a three-loss team, they go to the Big Ten championship or they go to Big East in basketball and they lose. Like they'd be out for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But now they went out against a couple. I'd probably consider some cupcakes. Boston College,
For sure.
Maybe be a tricky one. I'll give them that. Pitt isn't bad either. Syracuse, they'll beat them, and Stanford's playing good football. But like, they're going to beat all these teams, and they'll be that 10-2 or whatever it is, and they'll get it. I just don't love it yet, but I see why the AP has them rated there. We'll see where they finish.
Yeah. So if you had to end the show, we will give just our top 4 teams who you think is going to get a bye in the playoffs. I think the AP poll actually has it right. I think you flip flop one of these SEC teams if Bama or Texas A&M were to lose. But Ohio State, definitive number 1 seed to me. I think Indiana when they play Ohio State. I expect Ohio State to win, but I don't think that'll do anything as far as Indiana falling outside of the top 5. I think they should go down to at least 4 or 5 at the most. And then you have Texas A&M, who I think is sneakily the best team in the SEC. And then you have a chance for Oregon to kind of jump inside of that top 5. I don't think they'll jump inside of the top 4. They might flip flop with Georgia depending on what happens. But my top 4 is going to be Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and I actually think Georgia and Bama will switch, and I think Georgia is going to end up getting that last number 4 seed.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't mind that. I think that Bama does get in. This is Kalen DeBoer's year. Like he'll get in. I think Georgia is a football team that isn't as talented as the 3 teams you named above them, nor so like we'll see what Kirby Smart can pull out of a hat. I don't disagree with you. I just think it's Texas A&M, Ohio State, Alabama, Indiana in order, in my opinion, almost a strength of schedule. I'm just giving Ohio State the nod against Alabama because they are undefeated and Alabama has a loss, but especially at this point, a really bad loss. But then I have so the AP. I think the AP has it mostly right. I think Virginia is probably the team that gets in. I have
Mm.
Texas Tech. I don't know who I have them in front of, but I've got Texas
You have
Tech
them in front of
in front of
BYU.
both.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So they're 10 on my list.
Right.
I'm trying to think about who I dropped out. Miami,
Georgia Tech.
Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt. I don't know what I expect from them, but I do think they drop one, and I think they get left out. I think
Mm.
they're going to end up being a two-loss team that somehow doesn't make it. And matter of fact, Vandy losing would be one of the worst-case scenarios for this entire thing because they would be a two-loss SEC team with a pretty impressive resume, and I don't know if they're going to get in. Like
Yeah,
that
those
would be
timely losses are definitely a thing, just like the BCS era where you could be 11 and 0, 10 and 0, but you drop that last game, the two teams behind you are undefeated, you're going to be sitting outside of that national championship game. So it is the same premise, I think.
because they have Texas and then they have Auburn, Kentucky, and then they finish with Tennessee.
Right.
That Tennessee game is make or break for both teams. Tennessee
Mhm.
could be right there. They're currently sitting at what is that, 14? You
Right.
basically win out and you're in, kind of thing. And so I just this year is really tricky because we thought we would see like three loss, three loss, three loss, and
Right.
we'll certainly get some of that. But that is not what the season's given us. And I think Ole Miss puts a wrench in this. Georgia Tech puts a wrench in this, and Vanderbilt puts a wrench in this because those teams we did not expect to be this good for this long. And it looks like all those teams, minus Georgia Tech over Georgia, could win out potentially. And so
Right.
it
Yeah.
gets real dicey because Tennessee deserves to be in. Like if they win out, but they could get left out because there's only 12 spots.
And
And
I
so
think that's the main argument for why a lot of these coaches and teams are in the background uh really challenging for a 16 team playoff because of things like this and strength of schedule and quality losses versus quality wins and stuff like that. Georgia Tech and Georgia playing at the end of the year is has a lot of implications, not just Georgia Tech fighting for pride, but for real playoff seeding and stuff like that. Like you said, Tennessee and who is it? Tennessee and who did you say?
Virginia's 17, Tennessee's 14.
No, I'm saying for the last game, you said Tennessee's gonna be playing who the last week?
Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt. Yeah, that's pretty much a playoff get buy-in game. So if you win that, you're in. If you lose, loser leaves town type of game. I think that's what college football definitely has wanted to happen with this extended playoff, and then just with putting a marquee game on TV every single week that you want, just like in the NFL with divisional games the last couple weeks of the season. This is what it comes down to, and I think that's what the people who market college football, that's what they want. Unfortunately, what that might lead to is an even bigger expanded playoff which I think a lot of people are against. I think it probably should cap out at 16. I think 12 is fine with the one automatic bye for four different teams. I think if you do 16, it gets a little funky with travel and who plays what home game and what kind of momentum you have to build. A lot of things that go into it that are obviously above our head, but we're just gonna have to deal with it when it comes. But
Well, are there 16 quality teams?
I don't
Like
think so. I think
I
it's
think
probably 10, and then the two extras that you have are like just to fill out a bracket.
100%. Like Virginia barely escaped UNC.
Right.
Like is Louisville? Like, do they deserve to make the playoff? Like I don't know. Like Tennessee's okay. Texas Tech has
Right.
holes in it. BYU, I still don't trust them. So like, I don't know that there are 8 teams that could win the whole thing. I don't think that's the case. But what we have seen though this year specifically is parity has dropped down. We've seen consistently that like the richest roster schools
Mm-hmm.
are getting less and less wealthy, and
Correct.
the poor schools, at least some of them, are building back up. Virginia being 15, never would have had that on my bingo card. BYU, can't explain what they're doing. Georgia Tech, no idea. There's no reason why they shouldn't be great. They're in Atlanta, a great recruiting bed, but like here they are. Vanderbilt, same thing. So I think another 2 years of I would like to see 16. We would see, I think, probably 7 teams that like legitimately could win the whole thing. Um, and so it's great for I think us as college football spectators and commentators, you and I, but just as overall whole, like all these fan bases have a chance to really see their team go far, which you never would have expected.
Right. Well, that'll conclude our second live show from First and Cam. Thanks to my host, Evan, for taking time out of his day and joining the show. It's been great. It's been a great football season, commentating it, betting on it, winning, losing. Follow us on TikTok. It seems to be blowing up so much so that somebody made a fake account and posted our bets, posted our winning bets on their page, and the page ran up like almost 300 followers. It kind of made me mad. I reported it, had a bunch of people report it, but whatever. The game is the game. But we've been doing well on socials, so follow us on there. Follow us both, Evan Scales, Cameron Scales on X, to get our commentary over the weekend of these games and much more. We will be back on Wednesday to discuss our bets and more of this coaching carousel that continues to be a nonstop story. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys later.